It's like a natural theme park out here.
If everyone had a moment to come out here, they would fall in love with this place.
Getting up on a paddleboard is so much easier than you think.
The springs actually stay 72 degrees year-round.
The more I explore here in Florida, I realize how much there is to discover right in our own backyards.
You'll always have something new to see, so it never gets old.
Welcome back. I hope everybody enjoyed their lunch as well as that sneak preview of the O2O film. I'm Julie Wraithmell. I'm the executive director of Audubon, Florida, which is Florida's oldest statewide conservation organization. We're 123 years old this year, with about 100 staff that I characterize as resource managers, researchers, educators, and policy wonks. We team with our 45 grassroots chapters to work on water, wildlife, habitat, and climate, and especially landscape scale conservation like the wildlife corridor. Today, I'm really excited to whet your appetite for this afternoon's sessions with a quick conversation with two of the people most key to the protection of Florida's landscapes. I'm grateful to have with us today Secretary Shawn Hamilton from the Department of Environmental Protection. He's been with DEP since 2007 and has deep experience in all of the aspects of that agency, so as well as the regulatory elements, also land and recreation and the restoration work that that agency does. Similarly, we have Commissioner of Agriculture, Wilton Simpson, who is a self-described entrepreneur as well as a farmer. You probably know him, though, from his 10 years in the Florida Senate, the last 2 of which he was the Senate president and had an instrumental role in the passage of the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act. Today, he's the Commissioner of Agriculture, and between the 2 of them, their agencies drive Florida Forever and the Rural and Family Lands programs, respectively. So thank you both for being here with us today, gentlemen. I'll go ahead and start off with celebrating some of our most recent successes. So Shawn, Florida Forever, of course, is the envy of the country. You know, we've had land acquisition in Florida since the 70s, and we've really seen things speeding up in the last years. Just since July 2022, we saw 100,000 acres closed, and there's another 175,000 that are already in progress. Can you tell us a little bit about what's driving this urgency for the agency and what's made the acceleration possible?
Thanks, Julie. And I was at this conference a year ago, and we were talking about the need to accelerate. We were talking about the need to be able to have those key tools to be able to do that. And I think the same thing I said then, I'll say now. One of the biggest things, and the commissioner can appreciate this, as being a part of that, is consistent and predictable funding. Being able to make sure we have the resources and tools and be able to account on that from a project planning perspective is core to our ability to be able to have meaningful conversations with landowners, to be able to queue up works and prioritize projects, knowing that we have that funding backstop. I could tell you this, conversations are a lot quicker when you have $0. They don't go that well, they don't last that long, and they're hard to really plan around. And so I think that to us, that's the core. We continue to see great support from the legislature and obviously the governor driving that conversation. And so to me, that's going to be the key thing. And our staff's done a phenomenal job of making sure they find efficiencies, making sure they engage, making sure that they're doing everything they can to take advantage of that opportunity.
That's wonderful. Well, and frankly, Commissioner, there's no moss growing on you or the agency either. The Rural and Family Lands Protection Program is really important, not just to protecting our conservation landscape, but also our working landscape. And you guys had a rule update earlier this year. You've made an impressive new hire, Sue Mullins, I'm talking about you, as well as we heard today that you guys just closed another easement today. Can you talk to us a little bit about the timeline for the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program going forward? I know that there's probably a lot of landowners and conservation deal brokers hanging on your every word for this afternoon, so.
Sure. Well, you know, it was a real honor to serve in the legislature. And what I didn't realize until recently was that between '01, when that was established, the Rural and Family Lands, there was only $100 million appropriated between '01 and '21. Fortunately, when I was Senate President, I had put $300 million in that program, and then I think we spent about $100 million of that already. But when we opened that program this last May, we've got over $1.5 billion of opportunities in that program today. So we're a little bit disappointed with the veto that we got, but I think this money will be spent in the next 6, 7, 8 months, and we do have a great team now with Sue heading that team up. And we're getting through our program so that when we go to the legislature this year, we can say, look, we can legitimately spend up to $1 billion, $1.2 billion or $3 billion or whatever it is this year. And of course, it's our intention to open that program again earlier next year to align more with the federal process and also to align more with the legislature so we can see what type of demand. But as we have went around the state, demand has not been the issue. The resources are the issue, and again, I was very proud to be a part of the wildlife corridor, the creation of that, and to work alongside all of our farmers. By the way, cows keep Florida green, and but the reality is I was very proud to be a part of this, and now being in this role and getting basically a front row seat to the preservation that's going on, and the Secretary's been a great partner in that, and we've got a lot of opportunities going forward.
That's wonderful. Well, and it's hard being popular, so I hope that you can. I hope you can tolerate it. So with that, the corridor isn't divided up into the alphabet soup of programs that fund it. And like we heard from some of the speakers yesterday, bears don't really recognize the line on the map, and neither does water. So can you guys share a little bit with the folks here today about how do your programs complement each other, work together, because you are part of this bigger vision of landscape connectivity?
I think one of the things too, if you think about the nature of the program and the department, some of the core departments' mission and how they complement each other, and just if you think about natural lands, if you think about their functions, their ecological values, we talk a lot, and rightfully so, about that conduit they provide for those, wide-ranging iconic species, but also think about, the water recharge capability, the resilience functions. If you think about all of the other aspects associated with that green infrastructure, we have a lot of programs that also support those functions, whether it's our springs funding, looking at lands that buffer those springs for those aquifer reasons. If you think about the other aspects, if you think about our state parks, who are iconic in just being phenomenal land managers, but they also serve to connect people to all we're conserving and make sure that we have that continued engagement and appreciation, and not just for the folks who live here, but the folks who visit us. And so again, I'm really proud of our state parks, some of the folks who are there, so I always want to make sure I acknowledge the amazing job they do as resource managers. But then we also have other programs. Our resiliency program, again, if you're looking at coastal habitats, also looking at habitats that surround those critical functions, they're also making investments that benefit that corridor in a part of that holistic picture. So again, a lot of those parts all come together for, like you said, that holistic view and provide us with a comprehensive strategy. And then obviously, as the commissioner talked about, our programs do complement, we work well together to be able to build that even further, so.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'll add to that just like as DEP sometimes will take down a forest area that's connected to a current state forest, we will bring that into our management team. DEP obviously makes those recommendations, and we try to make those natural efficiencies happen within those systems to save the taxpayers' dollars. And what I would say is what I hope going forward, when I first got in the legislature 10 or 12 years ago, it was like, what's a $20 billion challenge, right? The lands that we need. And I think a lot of it when we're doing development rights or conservation easements, we're getting 2 to 3 times the stretch on that dollar. So I think it's very important as we go forward to look how our 2 programs can work together, and we are in regional water projects and things of that nature. All of those things are intertwined. We need the farmland, and when we talk about, farm as a national security issue, the more the rural development family lands program that we do, the more that future farmland that we need to grow our food. A lot of the conservation easements that DEP is doing where they're leasing back to farmers. And so we're excited to be a part of that. And when you look at the totality of it, then obviously we count aquaculture, the Springs funding that was put in, and I always mention Now Save Crystal River because I normally just call it Kings Bay. But it was a project that I was involved in for many years in the legislature. The secretary has visited that project and seeing how we can clean up our spring sheds and waterways and remove that nutrient load using best management practices. So if you're in agriculture, if you come into our program, the Rural and Family Lands, you have a set of best management practices that you have to follow. And just as a hurricane, we're taking those opportunities. We increase the funding for cost share on upgrading water systems, nutrient load systems, things of that nature. So we're hoping those farmers will take advantage of those opportunities in the cost share programs. And we're gonna continue looking for better ways and more efficient use of the taxpayer dollar.
That's great. Well, and in addition to having Florida Forever and rural and family land projects adjacent to one another and additively being more as a result, you guys also stretch tax dollars further by partnering with federal programs too, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think if you think about partnerships, and we're here talking about our respective agencies, but obviously there are a host of others that play in that space, and an important part is if you think about FWC, you think about, a premier land manager who's just an important part of that function. And again, we do a lot of conservation easements, but we also do a lot of fee simple acquisitions, right? Obviously, they're the foundation of the public assets piece of this, and right, not everybody wants an easement, so that's a critical ingredient to this whole recipe, but we need willing land managers, so those partnerships are key. But when you think about the other aspect of it, you think about the federal funding piece, being able, like you said, Commissioner, to stretch those dollars. I mean, we've had acquisitions where we've partnered with like the Northwest Florida Sentinel Landscape, our military functions, right? That taking those base buffering opportunities, but also connecting large landscapes. In some cases, some projects, we've gone in front of the Board of Trustees and say, hey, great, we got a great project. Guess what? Your piece of this is 15% of the appraised value. That's it. And then, so that's thousands and millions of dollars we're able to leverage in other areas where we don't have that opportunity. So that is a key point, and those partnerships are crucial to be able to your point, if you look at the totality of the acreage, being able to accomplish that mission, that's going to be a big piece of it.
And I would add to that, obviously, our local water basin boards are a big part of that network. In Pasco County, we have an ELAMP program. Many counties have those programs. So the more we can utilize those dollars, it continues to stretch. Our goal here is 50 years from now, clearly we need potable water. And I describe the wildlife corridor sometimes, and people ask me, well, define the wildlife corridor. And I said, well, Google a map of the state of Florida at nighttime. You'll see the beautiful lights around the city you live in. Everywhere it's dark on that map is the wildlife corridor. It's where our aquifer gets recharged, it's where your food gets grown, and it's where our animals traverse the state. And we're very proud of that. And so we're going to continue to work not only with the secretary and his department, which has been amazing, but all of our local basin boards, ELAMP programs, the federal government, to make sure we're making use of those federal dollars and stretching our dollars.
Well, that's great, and especially in your role on the Florida cabinet. I mean, as one of the trustees, your vision is more comprehensive than just your own agency also, and we really appreciate you guys have been approving projects this year. It's been impressive and somewhat exhausting to look at from the outside. I can't even imagine. Your teams must be very proud of themselves. They deserve to be.
Yeah. We're very blessed at the department to have the teams that we have. I always mention to them, and they deserve the credit for these things. When we do something right, those teams should get those credits. I'll take whatever we do wrong, but they do a very good job for us. Our forestry team, and then the maintenance of these areas are, Sue and her team, the water policy program team, and so they've done a very good job there, and we're very proud of them.
Is there a particular project that's been approved recently that either of you would like to share, particularly with the audience?
Well, for me, it's...
You can't choose between your kids.
I was like,
so this is
that
not
is-
suggesting
I wouldn't...
that it's a favorite.
No, I am not going to touch that one with a 10th. They're all equally deserving of all yeah. As soon as you do that, do you understand the phone calls, the rings? I don't think you understand what you just did. So they're all great projects.
Wonderful.
Next question, Julie.
Secretary Hamilton.
Thank you.
Really? You're going to hide behind him like that?
Yes.
Really? I wasn't saying that to choose favorites. I was saying that because I'm not sure that Floridians realize just how special these places are that you guys are moving forward on. And holy cow, it's moving fast.
So I only had 2 children at the last meeting, Buck Island Ranch and Adam's family.
There you go.
And so those are my 2 favorite in that meeting.
I think that's cheating.
That is cheating.
Could you tell us something about them that you...
It was, I think, between the 2, it was around 13,000 acres, which put our program at just almost, like 400 or 500 acres under 100,000. We're like at 99,600 and something acres. And so we were going to put out a release and say we're at the 100,000 mark, 100,000 acres, but we're not quite there yet. But we will be at the next cabinet meeting.
Well, and it sounds like you have a ton of applications in for rural and family lands too, so...
And we have the opportunity to close on properties now that are less than $5 million in costs. That's helping a lot. We're closing those periodically now, so you'll see more of that also.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think with it, thinking about efficiencies, right? I think and that provision just came live for us under, with authority and delegation, this calendar year, and we've already purchased 9,000 acres with that delegation. And so those things are happening, and we're making great investments in being able to streamline that aspect of it and not waste the all-important trustees' time with, great projects that we're able to move through the process. So.
Well, and I think that was as a result of legislators hearing directly from landowners that they wanted to see things moving more quickly, and that was one of their solutions. So that's wonderful. So I know that you guys don't get to sleep very often, let alone recreate, but I'm mindful of the fact that all of the justifications that we make for protecting landscape connectivity, a lot of them we make with our heads. We know that it's important to Florida's economy. We know it's got bipartisan support because our property values depend upon it. Our tourism sector depends upon it. We recognize that they provide us with water to drink and air to breathe. But connection is not just habitat connectivity, it's personal connection, as I do something inappropriate with my microphone. But the connection that we have with these places is real and profound, and it's what brings people together around them and has made the support from Floridians so durable for the work that you guys do. So I know for my part, most recently this weekend, I spent time donating blood to the yellow flies in Apalachicola National Forest while I was also hiking and bird watching. I was curious if you guys would share a recent experience in the outdoors that kind of girds you for this work, that it inspires you as you come to the table on landscape protection.
So let me see. I'm trying to think back prior to public service the last time I had vacation.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, if he says too many things nice, he's going to give me his evaluation will go in this week.
So again, if I didn't talk about anything but our great state parks, I would definitely be remiss for 2 reasons. A, they're phenomenal if you haven't connected to one, but also they're beautiful connection points to you. And I've always grown up like investing in visiting state parks because they make the access easy, right? They make it meaningful, but at the same time with all of the stuff they do to connect you to it. And so I kind of grew up loving state parks. And so with that, I've kind of got, and again, this is more, if my wife's watching, I want her, every anniversary, we go to the same region and we visit the same state park. I say every, for the last 5 years in every. And so that will be no different. We'll make the run between Grayton and Topsail because she loves the beach. She loves that area. She loves getting out. She loves getting out in nature. So it provides like everything that she wants. It's got the beach, it's got trails, it's got cabins, it's got the whole gamut for her. And so that's probably my favorite just because it's her favorite. So.
State Park infomercial, well played. Good job, good job. How about you,
Yes.
Mr. Commissioner?
Yeah, how do you top that, right?
You can do it.
Well,
There
you
go.
don't top it. So no, what I've done, as Commissioner of Agriculture, it's a different world than being a senator, a Senate president. I spent a lot of weekends in Homosassa Springs for years with the family. When we started the Kings Bay project, and they started before I got there, was one rake at a time initially, and I saw the videos, and that's probably been 8 or 10 years, but me and the secretary visited maybe a year or so ago, both of those parks, Homosassa and at Kings Bay, to see the progress that was being made. It was tremendous progress. I visited the Northern Everglades and looking at the water storage projects that are ongoing there now that's, I think, going to revolutionize the ecosystem in and around the Everglades. I was in the middle of the C43 reservoir that's not online yet. It was supposed to be last year. We're working on that. But the 44, I've been around it. So a lot of my travels, I haven't actually went and enjoyed the springs lately, which is not good. Generally, there was some scalloping and laying around in the springs to go along with that, or fishing. But I have visited most of our forests in the state in the last 9 months. We've got a great team out in those forests, and it's real when you go and see what we're producing and you see the results of your work. And in the many years in the legislature, as we funded billions of dollars of projects, all the restoration projects in and around the Everglades, the restoration of our spring sheds. I get a lot of satisfaction from doing those visits, and except for my grandchildren spent a week at Disney Wilderness Disney a few weeks ago. That was probably the big highlight. But no, I've enjoyed going around and seeing the work that the legislature. I was with Governor Scott his last 6 years, and then Governor DeSantis has been a champion for these issues. And going around and seeing that in the Keys. I was there a few weeks ago, and we're looking at now the reef restoration down in the Keys. So I've got to travel the state and see a lot of our landscape in the state, and we're very proud of it. And if you're flying across a lot of it, there's still a lot to save. And so that's what we're focusing on.
That's great. And I do think you need a weekend. So
good luck, right?
Yeah.
It's all good. So in closing, we just have a couple minutes left. You have a lot of very devoted advocates in this audience right now. If you were to give them some advice on keeping the faith, being effective, making this work as effective as it possibly can be, what would you tell them?
Well, I think from the department's perspective, this can't happen without the partnerships largely, that are sitting in this room. If you think about being able to close on that, that 7+ million acres that are left, it's going to take the land trust. It's going to take all of the local and, those large-scale land trusts being able to help us knock on those doors, bring products, bring willing sellers to the table. I mean, again, that it is definitely a community body of work that's required to do it. But I think one of the things, too, there's a need for constant calibration. It's kind of like always asking, now what? Okay, now what? We've gotten over $1 billion to land conservation funding since 2019. Now what? How do you make sure you're doing everything to honor that investment and do right by the legislature and the governor's commitment to that? How are you making sure that your streamlining process is engaging, staying staffed up, staying forward thinking? So always asking the now what. And I think I would always challenge everybody in this room and our folks when we do it, don't make any assumptions. They're safe assumptions, right? You and I assumed this chair would be here once we started that motion down to sit. That's an easy assumption. But don't assume the competitive nature of the market will stay the same. Don't assume that the development interest, and as we buy more conservation, don't make an assumption that those same status quo approaches will work from here on out. You have to assume that we'll need to continue to look inward and outward, how to make sure that we're staying aggressive and find ways to compete with those. Not compete's not the right word, because we're supportive of those interests, but we're very supportive of also securing the corridor. And so I think that's the key, and that will take all of us in this room working together to do that.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is that, when you think about land conservation and how do we get there faster? How do we continue the momentum? And I think of ideas that when sometimes you have to buy fee simple properties because the landowner does not want a conservation easement. But as a state of Florida, we could immediately surplus those back, remove those development rights and put them right back into agriculture, and then use those dollars to do more. So if we buy, in the next 5 years, $1 billion of fee simple property, you could probably surplus 300 or 400 million of that back into the program to buy more conservation easements. So, and then when you think about it, once it's under a conservation easement, it stays on the local tax roll. So you're supporting your local communities. It stays generally in agriculture with those conservation easements. So you've got a place to grow your food. And then the state doesn't have to go back to the legislature and ask for competing dollars to maintain and to take care of that property, right? Those property owners have to take care of that property, and they're signing an agreement to do so. So I think as we go forward, we've been blessed. You know, when I left 2 years ago, we had $22 billion of reserves. That's not always going to be the case. We know that. Tougher times will come, and when those dollars start drying up, we're going to have to be creative of how do we sustain our momentum. And I believe the way you sustain it is by surplusing those lands that can be surplused and left in agriculture, and allowing those farmers, the first environmentalists, to take care of that land. And when you think about groups, I know the Cattlemen and Conservation Florida are putting a coalition together to help do more, and I know Carlton Ward and his team, and all of these teams are coming up with creative ideas. And if there are certain landowners that, again, want to have a fee simple purchase, that's great. But as a state of Florida, and we're going to work on this more this year, is we should be looking for ways then to put that back out again in the same exact state as if they would have wanted to have preserved, you know, their land for their family and their farming. And so that's what we're going to be working on, some of that this year.
That is a provocative and a creative proposal, Commissioner. Always here bringing the adventure. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for.
Well, we really appreciate both of you being here with us this afternoon, and I know that we may not have you for all of the afternoon, but know that all of these folks here will be having those creative conversations for the remainder of the conference, and I can't wait to see what all of you come up with to advance the corridor and landscape conservation better, faster, so that when we come back next year, we can celebrate even more. So thank you very much, both of you gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.